discussion. Let me just see. Excellent. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes. Yes.
Super. Excellent. So as I said, what I thought we could do today, given that we have covered resilience in previous meetings, is just really thinking more about the practical exercises, which you may find useful. And a little bit along the lines of what Louise did last time, these exercises might, be useful for you individually, but also hopefully, when supporting your teams. And I will send out the related toolkit or workbook afterwards via email so that everyone gets it, not just people who were here today. And as I said, I can't take any credit. It was all done by one of the consultant psychologists who sometimes work for the BPS, Dr. Audrey Tang, and she has kindly given me permission to pass this on to you and share her resources widely. This is just a brief overview of what I wanted to do today. And as Ashley also said, I think the last 15 minutes of today might be really useful to think about, how we move forward, what is useful, and how we can link in a little bit more what Ashley's team does and what we are doing in our meetings here. So hopefully you guys had a bit of a discussion or reflection on where you feel or your teams are at the moment with regards to feeling resilient, or maybe not, and what might need to happen or you think would be useful to increase your team's resilience. And I guess just as a really brief recap, what we have discussed so far was we had, I think, one meeting where we talked about what resilience actually is. We also talked already a little bit about how to support resilience and how to support teams, but I think the focus was less on practical exercises, so I hope this feels like an add-on rather than a duplication. We also had one forum where we reflected on pandemic fatigue and resilience. And I think throughout actually the past year, I would say, we had different themed sessions, I suppose, which, we can always make the link to resilience, or, where we may have thought about this would also increase teams' resilience, our individual resilience. So again, coming back to the most recent session when Louise was here, I really thought looking at her exercise and what she talked to us about in the broader sense, of course, that is also something which will help us to increase our own strengths, but also our team strengths. Just to really briefly recap how research into resilience came about was, looking or thinking about actually what happens when individuals are in crisis. And usually there are 4 very common reactions to when we hit, a crisis or very stressful reactions. Stressful situation. We either may feel defeated or, just almost like giving up or completely overwhelmed by what is happening or has happened to us. Another possible outcome is that we will recover, but we may have some long-standing injuries. And of course, these could be physical if we're thinking about accidents and, more natural disasters or, other really traumatic events, but also, of course, more well-being related injuries or, mental well-being injuries. The third possible way is that we will recover, and it's basically, the core concept of resilience, the bouncing back. We are able to, to manage despite having had a really challenging situation or adverse event happening to us, and we are basically going back to how we were before the event. And then for some of us, or in some situations or circumstances, we are even able to thrive because of the challenge or the negative or the traumatic event we have faced. And that is basically going further than where we were before. So it's a little bit when we think about trauma, when people have this notion, despite having experienced a trauma, they can see the silver lining, or they feel they have taken something from it, or they almost feel stronger than before. As I said, not everyone is necessarily able to do that. And of course, that is, okay as well. We all have, strengths and weaknesses and vulnerabilities, but hopefully some of the exercises we will go through will just generally help us think a little bit about how we generally can thrive and what would be useful in moving us further or helping us to develop, if that makes sense. Also, I thought what was really, useful or poignant when I was listening to Dr. Audrey Tang is that, this notion that when we talk about mental health or mental well-being, we often, talk about that we suffer from mental health, or it actually has a quite negative connotation. And actually, if we think about it, mental health is at the end of the day, as we actually talk about physical health. And of course, it sits on a continuum. So we either are really well in our mental well-being, or of course we suffer significantly, and that is then when we need to think about more structured or formal support. But I think, yeah, moving forward, it might be useful to think, for us about that. Actually, when we talk about mental health, it should be as if we talk about physical health. And yeah, and I don't know why that is, that, it's often with a negative connotation, that, or it feels like we're talking about the problem when we talk about mental health. And of course, that's not always the case, because if we are feeling all right, or if we're feeling fine, then actually, or if we're in good mental health, then of course that is positive rather than, negative. And I guess how Dr. Tang conceptualized the exercises, or why she chose those, I will present in a moment, is that it was really with this notion we would like to think about or beyond coping. So it's not just, the kind of what do we usually do to cope. And I think lots of us, we have discussed it in so many meetings, and I think you guys are really aware of what is useful to you, and hopefully also what is useful within your teams. But I think it is more, now adding or thinking about, the kind of positive feelings we might have, or how we can foster that, thinking about building healthy relationships and having purpose, having meaning. I think that is something we have also already touched on, in previous meetings. And again, making the link to the most recent forum when Louise Hankinson was talking, I think that was one of the key aims from her exercise as well, feeling like whatever we do, it has meaning to us, it is, giving us purpose, and it is according to, our values and what is important to us. And actually, making a point that we notice that as well. So rather than concentrating on the things which are difficult or which are not going well, actually noticing what have we actually achieved, or what has actually gone well today. And I think that is really the key point for the next few exercises. So what I will do, I will just come out for a moment out of this presentation. As usual, we will make this available to you. And I will just go, if it allows me, to share the other workbook. Any questions so far? Does this all make sense? All makes sense? Excellent. Sorry, because I can't see you guys while I'm talking. That's why it's a bit tricky. Again, can you guys see this?
Yep.
Yeah. Excellent. So as I said, this is basically just a summary what Dr. Audrey Tang had on her slides as well, and I'm just now talking about some of the tools she suggests we can use. I am mindful of time, and I know that the feedback was from the last meeting that Louise didn't have enough time, in a way, to talk about the tool she's using, and we were very mindful and aware of that. And today might feel similar, but knowing that you guys will have access to this resource and can look it up in your own time, and maybe also choose the things you feel would be useful or you like. And as I said, we can always discuss it in follow-up meetings. So my aim is really just to give you guys a brief overview of what, it's basically a summary, because I really would like some time for the discussion with Ashley as well, if that is okay. So the first tool Dr. Tang talked about was knowing your goals, or the flow exercise. And some of you may have heard this or are familiar with this. So basically the idea is that whatever your goal is you want to do, that you can break that up into manageable pieces, and also indicating, I guess on the rating scale from 0 to 10, where you feel you're at, and where at the moment, and where you feel you would like to be. So as one starting point, you could put the your goal in the middle circle, the white bit, and then maybe breaking it up into smaller bits. So yeah, I don't know what would be a good example. I don't know if any of you have any recent examples, something you wanted to achieve.
Well, I do have an example. Well, I've achieved it just very recently, but
But recently I did set up a goal reflecting how I was feeling, that I wanted to work part-time. That will be very important for my physical and mental health. So I could balance everything else in my life.
Super. Thank you very much. So your goal was to reflect on or making a decision about whether to work part-time or reducing your hours.
Yes.
Super.
And yeah, that was a reflection of how I was been feeling over the last 6 months or so.
Super. And I guess that could, I mean, I don't know if you feel that was your goal. Do you feel that needed to be broken down a little bit more, or would that be just one?
Well, it could be breaking out why I wanted, but I was just feeling exhausted and tired and feeling I was giving more to others than to myself. And I needed space, time to be able to look after myself a bit more. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So I guess maybe in the middle circle, the white bit then goes, this notion of feeling really tired and exhausted and noticing that this is something actually you don't want to feel like. And then maybe in the green bits, then the different steps of what you feel you could do to come, to work on that. Or I guess you need to rephrase the goal. So if you're noticing you're feeling really tired and exhausted, I guess the goal would be, or your aim would be, to feel less tired or more refreshed or more, able to recharge your batteries. So I guess that would go in the middle. And then one of the green bits could be, for example, having space and time to actually think about that. And then I guess you're rating on that scale, where you are at that moment in time. Do you feel like, you had plenty of opportunities to reflect and, have protected space to do though? Then I guess it would be one of the higher numbers. If you feel like, gosh, I haven't really made any time for this so far, then it might be one of the lower numbers. And then it's thinking what would be realistic for you, or where would you like to be? So for example, if we think across a week, you might say, well, to really make this meaningful to me, I might want to have at least 2 or 3 times throughout the week where I can have some dedicated space to reflect and think. At the moment, I might have hardly any, but I would like to move up on that scale a little bit. Does this make sense? Yeah, sorry, it's difficult because I can't change the diagram, but I hope, you guys get the gist. So that this is how it is: thinking, what is your goal, framing this in a positive way, and then thinking, rating where you are with that at the moment and where you ideally want to be, or what is realistic. I usually do both, because I think sometimes, I don't know how it is for you guys, but I often feel like what I think in my ideal world I would like to achieve is not always practical. So not to kind of be caught out by that, I then have an intermediate step as well to think, okay, so what is realistic? So at the moment, I don't have any time to reflect and think. In an ideal world, I would like to do it maybe every day, but actually realistically at the moment, if I could do it 3 or 4 times a week, that would be, that would be good enough. And then I guess that's, how you can work through the cycle, if that makes sense. Thank you very much for sharing that example. That is really useful. Any other examples or any questions with regards to the first exercise? Excellent, thank you. So the second one I thought was a really interesting one. And again, I thought was quite powerful just looking at this is, and I think it comes back to one of the things we talked about last time as well, thinking how we prioritize. So if we feel really busy and pressured for time, if our teams are really busy and pressured, how do we actually prioritize, or can still put our team's well-being first, or finding time to support them? And I thought this might be a nice exercise to think about that. So if you have a circle and split it basically into 4 different areas, so what are the things you really need to do because they're important and urgent? What are things which are actually important but not urgent? So I guess they can go in the delay box. What are things which are really not important and not urgent? You could delegate those. And they're not important but urgent. Delegate those because they need to be done. And then the ones which are not important and not urgent, you could just delete. And actually, having this so clearly, or having just 4 areas to think about, if I thought about, for example, my workload at the moment or my work situation, when there are times where, I may feel overwhelmed, or again, coming back to what you guys, said last time, I felt that was really useful, breaking it down and almost visually having, okay, what needs to go in this box? What needs to go in that box? Who could help me with that? Who can I delegate to? And what can I really just leave at the moment? Because I think in times of stress, or when we are feeling pressured, suddenly everything feels important, everything feels urgent. But actually, if you review it, there are a lot of things which actually, they're not that crucial, or they have already been parked for quite some time, and there's no harm in, parking it again. And again, thinking about supporting your teams and what is important. And if we think about patient care, of course, there will be things which are really important and urgent and can't wait. But I'm sure you will be able to identify with your teams as well, or they will be able to do that. What are things, we can get help for or delegate, and what are things we really don't need to attend to, either right now or not at all. So I have to say, I personally really liked this, but I know I'm also someone who really responds to visual cues or looking at something. So for me, yeah, I felt that was quite powerful. Again, does this resonate with people, or do you think this is useful or practical to do with your teams?
I think so. And I think this is almost a technique. I do this. I try to do this when I have a big to-do list. It's almost like filtering, literally filtering what needs to be done, what can be delegated, what is urgent now. And I try to do this when I notice there's a lot going on accidentally and things get a bit confused. Just and this can be done on clinical areas as well. So I think it would be a very good thing to share with the teams.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. And you may have to redo this again, or sometimes you may find one thing will move a little bit through the areas, because I do appreciate we're not living in a static environment. So things may change, things you think, which were delayable might suddenly become really urgent. And of course, then we need to review. But what I also thought this could be really useful for if you're doing it with teams. Again, if we think about maybe some of those discussions or reflections we had where things might feel tricky in teams or a little bit emotive, I find this is a really nice and hopefully simple way where everyone can contribute, but of course no one has to contribute, and it will help teams to have a shared understanding and hopefully shared aims moving forward, because it is something then everyone can agree to, or there can be discussions why maybe some team members feel this can be delayed or not, or this is too important to be delegated or whatever else. So I really feel that could help or structure some of those maybe more difficult conversations, or where we are not really sure how that might be going due to other team dynamics, if that makes sense. Yeah. I'm really mindful of time, and you can just see that definitely other exercises in as well. Some I thought I think are actually quite nice, and again something in a way simple to do and to think about. So talking about healthy relationships, or how we can stay connected within our team, so also with individual team members. And again, I really like this exercise, who would you invite to tea and why? But I guess also thinking a little bit about what we have discussed over the past few weeks, how can we be creative, changing how we meet. It's not always we're not always able to meet as a big group or face to face, or going for walks outside and all the rest of it. So that reminded me a little bit of that as well, another way of how we can foster and nurture the relationships which have changed understandably over the past 18 months. And then I guess lastly, also some exercises thinking a little bit about meaning and purpose and expressing gratitude. And again, this is something I feel we have touched on and has come up, in numerous meetings within this forum, but also in other staff support meetings I had, this notion how important it is for all of us actually at the moment, that we feel what we are doing is meaningful and has a purpose, but also feeling like that we are appreciated and our work is appreciated and acknowledged, approach, but of course also expressing this to our colleagues and in our teams. So again, these are just, you know, some really, I thought, easy exercises, or hopefully self-explanatory exercises. You can have a look and see if there's anything you would like to pick to support your teams. But I'm also more than happy, you know, to either bring this back in the next meeting, because I'm mindful today there are not that many people present, and, you know, of course, it's, you know, we're going into the holiday season and all the rest of it. But if you're happy to do it in your own time, then of course that is okay as well. Before I hand over, or I guess open it up to a wider group discussion and to Ashley, are there any questions from you guys, or anything you think would be useful to talk about or reflect?
I have a question. It's Anita. This is my first Wellbeing Lead team meeting that I've attended. I was just wondering how people are using these resources. Do people tend to send them out by email? I'm just conscious that they're great, but if we send them out by email, people might look at them and then not do them because they don't have the time, or they feel that they couldn't boundary that time. And how to raise that as something within the team that's really important for themselves, because people often put their well-being a little bit to the side and focus on their day job. And I'm just wondering how to, because I think these practical exercises would be really important for, I can think of teams and team members who would find it helpful if they could give it some time.
Absolutely. Is there anyone who would like to comment based on their experience in their team?
Anita, what I was going to share from when I've run similar kind of things before, where I was at Pearson, was actually doing what I think Judith suggested, that you almost go away and take the toolkit that she's going to give you and actually see if you can experiment using it over the next few weeks, and seeing which of the tools you find the most useful and sharing it with the people in your teams, almost doing an experiment. I love the trade-off matrix about which things are important and urgent and which things aren't, because it's a very good tool when you're feeling that everything's swamping you. It's a very good matrix to sit down and go, right, let's just stop, because there will be things that will be coming in that there's other people's priorities that aren't yours, that you can go, wait a minute, that's not important or urgent for me, and helps you do that quick prioritization. And that is very good at grounding and anchoring yourself. I'm also a mindfulness practitioner, so for me, having that break of 5-10 minutes to just allow yourself to do that exercise actually allows you to have a far more fruitful day, because otherwise what happens is the stress and anxiety response kicks in, cortisol and adrenaline are kicking around your system, and you're just kind of going, which then just burn you out quicker. So having that 5-10 minutes to do that exercise is worth its weight in gold. I would say that from personal experience and for using it with my teams as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ashley. And I guess, Anita, you know, I really hear your point as well about, you know, conflicting demands, and everyone is so pressured for time and all the rest of it. So what might be useful if there are already existing structures, so for example, regular team meetings or handover meetings or whatever it is, slotting that in. And that's what I like about those exercises. You know, some like the one Louise did last time, and sorry that I always refer back because you know, you weren't present then, but they may need more time. But these ones I've just shown you, you could just easily do that, you know, as a starting point to a meeting, and then you could just have this almost as a rolling agenda item, then coming back to it, what may have changed, especially the 4 different areas, you know, what can be delegated, delayed, whatever else, what is really urgent. I think that's a really nice way of prioritizing needs and, you know, tasks from a team, even on a day-to-day basis or week by week, or however your team is meeting. And then, of course, in an ideal world, we would like to have protected time to come together as teams, reflect, and all the rest of it. Or if you have an away day, that's how we often, you know, connect with teams as well, or do these things then in a, you know, of course, broadened version, or also with a different focus, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
No worries. Any other questions before we move on? Super. Ashley, I don't know, is it then worth while talking a little bit about, I guess, what you discussed with May, or yeah, what your team is doing at the moment, and then we can see what would be useful moving forward.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Judith. So I think I was telling the small group, our little splinter group who was in the other meeting earlier, I was explaining about my role. For those of you who don't know, nice to meet you. I recently joined the Trust as Head of Wellbeing. So my responsibility is all of your well-being and making sure that we can do as a trust everything we can to support your well-being. And I think we're all more than well aware of why our own well-being is so important in order to look after ourselves, in order that we can serve the patients as best we can. But that starts with looking after ourselves. And one of the things that I've noticed is that there's a brilliant amount of support, and it's brilliant that this group has been set up. Brilliant to see all the work that all of our colleagues in PsychMed have done to date. And so what it is to bring all of this brilliant work together that's already been up and running. I know bears massive dividends and is a massive support to a lot of people, and we've got this group of around, I think it's 200 or so, isn't it, Judith? 250 wellbeing leads across teams at the moment. I hear that we've got around 600 or so teams across the trust. So what we want to do is make sure that every team has a nominated wellbeing lead. And the other thing is we want to align this group, the wellbeing leads, to an NHS England initiative, which is actually called Health and Wellbeing Champions. Now, I don't see a particular reason for us to rename what's already working within the trust. I think it's probably just a slight realignment of what we're doing with NHS England, which widens it out from just what's been brilliant with PsychMed, but it's probably going to be, we're going to open it up a bit more to wellbeing. So it's going to involve all of the brilliant work that Judith and Anna and May have done all around kind of psychological and emotional well-being. We're going to be talking also about physical well-being, social well-being, and financial well-being. Those kind of 4 or 5 pillars that are out there that constitute well-being. I want to look at well-being holistically. So the idea is that in this forum will be co-owned by our colleagues in PsychMed and myself and team in wellbeing, so that we can use it to look at wellbeing more holistically. And the idea being that we will still use the wellbeing@ouh.nhs.uk as a first point of contact, and the PsychMed team will have someone to triage those calls. So there's someone in distress that needs help, they can still use that, but we'll have an administrator in the wellbeing team that if someone's got a more general wellbeing need, we can also escalate that and use that too. So that's the idea, and we're at the moment we're just going through conversations, myself, May, and the team, to finalise that. But I thought I'd just moot that to you so you're aware of any of the ideas, and if you think hopefully you'll think that's a good idea. But if there's anything where you're kind of thinking, my God, what are they doing? Please do say that. No, I'm hoping you're going to say that sounds great, and you're probably going to say, well, what can you do for me, Ashley? So I'll share with you a little of my experience. I've been going out, because listening is my key priority. I want to get a good grasp on what's going on, what are the pressures. So I've been looking at the absence and sickness data to see where the biggest needs are there. We've got, through the BOB system, integrated care system, we've got a wellbeing survey that's going out at the moment. If you haven't, please fill that in. Getting that data is really, really important to us, because we can look at a trust and we can compare it also to what's going on in the system. And also we've got the staff satisfaction survey. And I myself am doing a little bit of a tour around the various sites and the different divisions to have focus groups. And some of our divisional education leads are setting up focus groups, and I'm having kind of in-person focus groups where I can get out and talk to people and have more in-depth discussions, and to really understand what's going on. And therefore I'm getting kind of lots of bits of data. My idea is to triangulate all that the quantitative data I get from those chats, those focus groups and other interactions, and then I can then say, compare that to what we said our strategy is, to make sure that our strategy around wellbeing meets the needs of all of you guys, and is completely based in evidence, and also that we can get some of those quick wins out as soon as possible. You know, when I talk to people, they're saying to me, actually the staff room needs a lick of paint, we need an additional chair or 2 there, you know, simple things like that. So it's as much those simple things as it is the techniques that Judith's been sharing with you. And also that when stuff comes up that you feel is a big issue for you, and you feel this is having an impact, and you feel you really want to contribute, and please reach out. I'm there, put in a meeting, we can have a Teams meeting, we can chat about it. I'm doing lots of different work with different communities. I've been liaising with the staff support groups. I'm doing a bit of a video interview with the BAME group later on, because they've got an event tomorrow. And so there's the staff support work I'm doing, there's the kind of work I'm doing with corporate, the work I'm doing through the wellbeing leads. And the other big thing, just to update you, that we'll be rolling out, and please look out for it, will be the wellbeing check-ins. And I think I alluded to them earlier. In September, we'll be launching wellbeing check-ins, whereby every manager will need to have a wellbeing conversation with their line report, and then each line report will be asked to go in and just note in My Learning Hub that they've had the conversation, so that we're aware that officially it's been noted. But we're also making provision for people to have it with someone else who might not be their line manager, because there might be someone else who they feel is better suited to have that conversation with. So we'll be launching that in early September. But Pallavi, who works for me, is doing a little bit of some trial groups. So some of you may already have been in to one of her little soft launches, where we've been iterating it to make sure that the training and the guidance docs are completely spot on and give you what you need. And then I think we'll be looking. I think we're going to see if we can get the Project Wingman bus. I don't know if you have heard of that. It's a nice bus that comes along with kind of lots of different kind of well-being things that you can go along and see and do in the autumn. So I'm starting to line up things, but really base everything that I'm doing, the strategy and all the things we're trying to deliver in, are going to be based on existing provision, which I think there's lots of great stuff. I know, Sarah, I've been talking to you about mindfulness. Those of you who don't know, I'm a trained mindfulness teacher and a coach. So I used to lead the global mindfulness program at Pearson. So I'm obviously keen to see if we can get mindfulness out there more too. No hint of bias on my part at all there. And look to see again, what can we do with our colleagues in clinical psych and all the brilliant work they do with the staff support service, occupational health, and again, other new and interesting initiatives that might come up that we might think will be really, really beneficial, but for them to be done in a way that actually is easily assimilated and can be used without causing additional work, because that's the key thing. Everyone that I talk to is extremely busy, and therefore it's what can we do that allows people to have these things but doesn't add any, but makes life easier. And I think for me, it's also what can I do to help you with those low hanging fruit, you know, and if it's something like we've heard that actually staff morale is low because the staff room provision is awful, then it message me, and I can then hopefully get on the call also with our brilliant colleagues in the charity who have got some budget to help address those things too. And also then, you know, we can talk to facilities if people aren't getting enough water or loo roll and the basics like that. We need to make sure those basics are in. That is part of our Growing Stronger Together program, that is to make sure the basics are, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We need those basics in before we get up the rest of that hierarchy. So that's really important. I think that's in a nutshell. I don't know if there's any other thoughts or reflections, or whether I've stunned you into silence.
No, I wanted to say thank you for that introduction, and it's nice to meet you. So we have water we've only just been allowed to put the water machine back in our waiting room, and the demand has been really high, so we didn't have any water. So I logged a call with the States to get a couple of water jugs, and then when I went up to get them from the canteen, they said that the call had been cancelled because we're outpatients. And I said, that is just so ridiculous. You know, if people at the end of the day that need water, why can't you help me? So, I mean, if I can tap into any resource that can help us get things, or even to offer patients a drink, you know, if a hot drink, because if they've had an extraction or had some bad news, and, you know, it's the staff that are contributing to milk and we can't get milk and things like that. So I would definitely speak to my line manager to see if we can get something, because it's just, we're considered as outpatients, and it's almost like, well, you don't, you know, we don't worry about you.
Put that in an email to me, because I'm gathering these kind of things, because I'm going to be pushing them up. So again, I can be a conduit for these simple things, that if I'm giving examples of them, specific examples, I can gather them together and I can say, look, boom, we can't keep it can't be a case of computer says no anymore, please. This needs to happen.
Absolutely.
And I'm the person to have those conversations.
Thank you.
So please do feel free. I know I'm opening up everything that I'm waiting for the deluge to hit my email account. As people start saying, have you heard there's this guy called Ashley Lodge who starts head of Wellbeing? It's like, yeah. So bear with how fast I'll be able to respond to them, but I'm hoping to, given, but these are important, because I've been having these very conversations, and when I've got specific examples, I can say, look what's happening. Come on, guys, we need to find a solution for this.
Yeah, indeed.
Super.
And Judith, what I was going to say was, obviously, I think at some point I'll be liaising with you, Anna, and May, May's back from holiday and Simon, and then we'll look to do some kind of launch as to how we're going to redo the group slightly based on bringing in the additional wellbeing lead. But this was just to moot it to this group for the time being.
No, that is fantastic. I think that is really important, has always been really important, hasn't it? That, it's really clear what we are doing, how we work together. So many things have popped up left, right and center with regards to well-being, and it's difficult to understand and, get our head around. But I think it's just really important, I guess, for this group, but of course you guys as the wellbeing leads, either confirm or say I'm wrong here. I think one of the key things for this group has always been the opportunity to kind of support each other and have time to reflect. So in those breakout rooms, for example, that's why we have always kept the presentation time really short, and only really did it because people also felt it's good if there's some sort of topic rather than having just 1 hour of just reflecting and all the rest of it. So I'm just mindful that for me that would be something I really would like to preserve in the future as well, that doesn't get lost, that people can connect and touch base and share with each other across teams their experiences and all the rest of it, whilst of course also really consider all the things and points you made, Ashley, which I think is really important. And I guess coming back to my really initial comment from today, that this needs to be useful to you guys, what you think is useful, rather than us thinking it might be useful to talk about X, Y and that. So please do get back to us, because at the moment we otherwise feel a little bit like, is this worthwhile revisiting themes from the past? Have people moved on? Do you guys want to change the format in any way? And Ashley, as you said, this might happen, over the next few weeks and months anyway. But I'm just thinking, over the summer period, I guess nothing is, drastically changing for the next 2 or 3 meetings. So, just please do email me, get back to me. What do you want more of? What do you want to change? Because, we really want this to be useful to you and based on your experience, if that makes sense. Also, in terms of evaluation and data collecting, all the rest of it, I think Ashley, this was a really important point. And people, you may have seen in the chat, I just put our normal our usual feedback form, the link to the feedback form up. So if you can briefly fill it in, say what is useful, that really helps us as well to think what would be useful moving forward.
Judith, one last thing from me. I was just going to say, NHS England have now started, they've given a whole range of different training course or webinars that people can attend who are health and wellbeing champions. So what I'll do is I will, if it's okay, Judith, using the wellbeing leads distribution list, I will send that round, because it's good kind of training. People can jump onto those webinars and they are open to everyone who is a health and wellbeing champion, i.e. this group. And thank you for the lovely message. I'm just looking at the lovely little messages in the chat. So so that's good. Happy to help and yeah, to do what I can. And yes, and work with Judith and team on this. Thank you.
Super. Thank you so much. Guys, I'm aware of time, but are there any final questions or comments before we close for today? Or is this okay if we are coming to an end for today?
Okie doke. Thank you, and feel free to drop me an email if you want, and copy in Judith as well, so she's aware, or vice versa, and then we'll carry on this discussion, and we'll get back to you with how it's going to evolve over the next month or so.
Super. Thank you, everyone. Lovely to see you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, thank you.